So we're using the webcam mic today, so it's going to be a little more like fuzzy, but until I can kind of get a lapel mic for these shows and we can do it wirelessly, I'm going to have to use this when I do my baking shows. So sorry for the audio quality, but we're getting there. Today we're going to bake with Totoro. And just to kind of get you started, you're going to need 2 bowls. This one's not microwavable, so I use that for mixing. That's all I really use it for. And then you're going to need a microwavable bowl because we're going to be using Fathead dough. So make sure you have a nice, big, deep bowl. Yeah, no, I know. I'm still labeled as Fortnite.
Oh, I didn't know if you cared.
I'm gonna have to fix it later. But why is it not showing up? Oh, here we go. There it is.
Where is he? Who's across the farmer?
A little bit of a slow start this morning. So what you're gonna need starting off, you don't have to get it perfect, but try to get it as perfect as possible, as baking is all about chemistry. So in order to bind ingredients correctly, you need to have the right sort of ingredients. For most keto recipes, with mozzarella cheese, you want to make sure you're going to get the full fat. You don't want skim or part, because a lot of times they do wheat additives, which I'm allergic to. And also it adds carbs to the cheese. So just be careful with shredded cheese. If you want to go the full fat way, then buy your own, but that can get a little pricey. So we just check and make sure that they haven't added anything to the shredded. So to start our Fathead dough, we're going to do 1.5 cups of mozzarella cheese, full fat. And then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of cream cheese. And like I said, it's hard to do tablespoons with cream cheese, because the great thing about Fathead dough is you actually don't have to soften the cream cheese before you use it, since you're going to microwave it. So get yourself a handy tablespoon here and scoop that out. Which, if you'd rather use a spoon and be more sanitary about it. I'm not serving this to anyone else but me and my family, so it's okay. Just wash your hands, Feels kind of like Play-Doh. Cream cheese is, I wonder if you could just sculpt it for fun and then chill it and serve that. That'd be kind of fun, like a cheese ball. Okay, we're gonna get our 2 tablespoons in there. Some notes on my phone here. And by the way, I've tried a lot of different cinnamon rolls that are keto, and at first I thought I'd like something with a little more of a harder texture, but every time I've made the texture like more firm, it's not as sweet. And we've tried like liquid sweeteners and everything, and there's just something about that texture that just doesn't go well with the cinnamon rolls. So believe me when I say I've tried many different versions of this, and this is the best one we've tried so far. So we're going to microwave this, and it's going to roughly be probably 1.5 minutes, but you want to microwave it in 30-second increments so it doesn't get overdone. So we're going to go ahead and do that for 30 seconds until we've got a nice consistency. I'm going to go ahead and take out this top rack because we need to put more in there. So got one of those. Great, so let's do 30 seconds on high. Let that go. We're going to cover this because we're going to need this cream cheese to make our icing. We're going to leave it set out. The cream cheese icing is going to be 1 tablespoon of cream cheese. And while that's kind of going in there, I'm going to get everything ready. So for the base, or our dough, we're going to need 3/4 a cup of almond flour. And since I don't have
Lid off this thing.
my 3/4 cup, I'm going to pull out my handy dandy glass one. Get this up here so I can see you guys' responses. There we go. Get some messages currently, so. And the great thing, if you guys aren't familiar with keto, is you don't have to watch your calories as much as you would before because of your macros, and I'll break those down in another show, but it really depends on height, weight, BMI, that sort of thing to break down how many you need a day. So for example, me, I would consume somewhere between 1,500 to 1,700 calories, but I would break it down by protein and whatnot, depending on how much exercise I had for that day. So let's go ahead and get this 3/4 a cup almond flour. And with your almond flour, it's the flour, not the meal. You want to, especially for these, have the super fine almond flour. Texture is very important with Fathead dough. You don't want to get the meal. The meal is going to give it a really weird grainy texture. And just like I said, with a lot of alternative flours, you're going to have to mess to make sure it's level. You get it as absolutely close as possible because it's chemistry, right? It's all in how it binds. I always used to think, when I was taking chemistry, I was like, when would I ever use this? Lo and behold, I use it every day. So, you're just kind of tuning in. For your base ingredients, we're doing a basic Fathead dough, which is going to be 1.5 cups of shredded full-fat mozzarella cheese, and 2 tablespoons of cream cheese. The great thing about it is you don't have to soften your cream cheese for Fathead dough because you're microwaving it for about 1.5 minutes, or just do it at 30-second increments until you get a nice dough that binds. And it's going to melt, and stir, and do it again. So we did our first 30 seconds. Check on it.
I'm not doing this for 2K. Fire elementals, water.
Normally it's about 1.5 minutes. Put it in for our second round of
I guess 20 rounds per
30 seconds on high. And for this, when you're going to actually roll out the dough, you're going to want to make sure that you have parchment paper. Parchment paper is important for any types of things you're going to need to roll out, like cookie dough, that sort of thing. It's white, and you're going to want to put it on the textured side, which is the non-stick side, and you'll be able to tell the difference between the two, like what's going to stick and what's not. Okay.
So, give you a nice little boost.
Go down here. Sorry, my notes just decided to jump around. I don't know why I did that. Okay, there we go. I'm going to check on it.
Just wait till you do it when you're crossing it out.
Looks like it's still going to need
They're right on the edge.
just a few more seconds. And then once we're done with the microwave, we're going to have to knead the dough really quickly while it's warm. And pro tip, if it ends up getting more stiff while you're trying to work with it, just stick it back in the microwave for about 30 seconds. So once that comes out, we're going to add, in addition to that, 3/4 a cup of almond flour, 1 egg, and then a tablespoon of baked sweetener.
Snake. When you go
And get my 1 tablespoon ready. Pull this guy out here.
Sorry, kid.
All right. I'm gonna stir it all like this. And for your sweetener, I've had a lot of people, sometimes I usually like to post these on the subreddit Keto Recipes and also on my website. So that way, a lot of people like to look at recipes written out. And I really should do some of those GIFs as well. Just a shortened version because no one wants to sit through like an hour-long show. Just give me the 2-minute version. I like it myself. So we're going to work in this 1 tablespoon of alternative sweetener. Now, I like Truvia and Swerve, but what I found is if you're in the States, now if you're outside of the States, I have no idea if they have an alternative to Truvia or what it's called, but here we have Apriva, which is like Truvia. And it tastes just as good to me, and it's half the cost. So I always like to recommend it because it tastes really good. So we're gonna mix in our sweetener, our 3/4 cup of flour, almond flour, and make sure it's the good stuff. It's the super fine and blanched whole almonds, and then our 1 egg. Always nervous I'm gonna get eggshell in there. It's like I cook all the time, but still the egg makes me nervous. And there you go, got a little small piece. Give our hands a little wash. If you missed earlier, I was just talking about how today is my Totoro apron day. Totoro. Cute. And unfortunately, this kind of dough is made for messy. You're gonna have to get your hands in there. Now, if you don't like it, you can always get yourself those latex gloves, and you're just gonna kind of work in the dough with the flour, the egg, and the sweetener. If you like yours a little extra sweet, you can put in some liquid stevia, which is super important for keto desserts. I highly recommend getting liquid stevia so you don't get that minty aftertaste like you do with the stevia sweeteners. We're just gonna blend it all together. Let's check and see if anyone's commented. No. And by the way, I'm not trying to be rude. If I don't catch your comment right away, my screen's a little far away today and I can't move it closer. So I'm going to try to glance over every once in a while just to make sure someone hasn't mentioned anything. So once we kind of mix it all in, you want it to be bound really well, so really work in the dough. And it's going to be super sticky no matter what because it's cheese. But the point is to get that egg and the sweetener really worked in. Something I forgot to mention earlier is this is going to be baking at 350, so make sure you preheat your oven before you start.
For the headshot.
Most keto desserts are going to be 350, anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes. Sometimes you come across recipes where it's about 14 to 17 minutes, which is rare, but that's usually like cookies. Like last night I made some sugar cookie Sammys, which I can show you here in a second because I got them in the fridge while we're waiting on this to bake anyway. And it's, oh, I found the perfect recipe for keto buttercream. And the one I adapted my recipe from, her name was Carb Maven, and I found her recipe to work extremely well because hers actually tastes like a buttercream should. Now, fair warning, it's very high in fat, but worth it. Okay, so these are going to be like, if you've ever had they also work for cream cheese danishes as well as cinnamon rolls. This recipe with the Fathead dough works very well with that.
And it's best plugging that first.
So, get this ready over here. Move some stuff out of my way. But you're gonna lay out your pan, which I'm just gonna use a small one here. It's gonna be a flat pan with our parchment paper on top, and then you're gonna want a second piece of parchment paper to go over the dough when you're going to roll it out flat. Okay, I think we've got this just about bound with the cheese. We're gonna go ahead and stick that bad boy on this. There we go. I'm gonna roll it out. Go ahead and wash my hands here. Like I said, it can get really messy, but very tasty. And when we're done with all this, I'll give you guys a nutritional rundown because I don't like to put my stuff up without explaining carbs, calories, and your macros, which are really important on the keto diet. You have to keep track of that. And if you're anything like me, if you eat wrong for a week, you gain 10 pounds. So that's just genetics for me. All right. I'm going to go ahead and do this only in the way that I can because I actually don't have a roller. I'm going to lay this on top of our pretty dough. And we're going to roll it out in the best rectangle that we can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as best as we can. I'm using a glass. So we're going to go ahead and press it down. You're going to try to make it as even as possible. You're just going to roll it out into a nice rectangle. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, just the best of your ability. I try to make it as thin as possible so that I can roll it up into these fun spirals. Sometimes I like to do fun little roses or different kind of shapes. You gotta do something fun while you're baking, right? Just roll it out. And you're gonna have to get your hands in this too because you want to make sure that it's all rolled out evenly so that it cooks evenly. Looks like we got our edges a little rolled out here. And I am a super perfectionist, so I like to make sure it is rolled out all nice and even. Got it done. And you can even go thinner than this if you'd like. Just get your hands in there and make sure you get all your edges about the same height as the middle. It all needs to be cooked evenly. There we go. And after that, roll it out. Yeah. So what we're going to do, rolled out here. Okay, so let me take a look at my notes here just for a second. So now we're going to mix our stevia, our cinnamon, and our water in a small cup to mix them all together. And your water needs to be warm so that you bind the sugar with the cinnamon. Go ahead and take off this. I prefer my cinnamon rolls sweet, but not overly sweet. So like I mentioned, if you want to add like a 3 or 4 drops of that liquid stevia in with this to make it sweeter, you most certainly can. But I like mine kind of semi-sweet, like Danish style. Okay. So we need, I believe it's a tablespoon of water. Let me go back and check.
So they just hide.
Yes. So we're going to need a tablespoon of warm water, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a tablespoon of alternative sweetener. Swerve, Truvia, Apriva, all those work. Warm water. Another thing is if you want to heat the water up a little bit before you mix the two together, that's also another way to bind the sugars. Almost warm enough. We're getting there. There we go. And it's not long that you have to heat that up. So we've got our tablespoon. We're going to do a teaspoon of cinnamon. Make sure it's a level teaspoon. So just, gently run your finger over the top until it's flush. Put that in with your water. And then you want a tablespoon of alternative sweetener. There we go. Blend these all together. Now for this, it's helpful. You don't have to have it, but it's really helpful if you have a pastry brush. And they look kind of like this, or some of them actually have bristles on the top. And this is all going to be put on the top of your dough to make that cinnamony, yummy flavor for the cinnamon roll. And I'll show you another product I actually add to this. It's going to make it really stand out in flavor. So make sure these are all blended together really, really well. And then we're going to go on top like this.
I'm going to get up for one sec. So what do you want up there?
Spread over all this. Now there's a couple different methods to rolling these cinnamon rolls. Some people like to cut them into strips and then roll the strips. I like to actually roll it into one big log and cut it, but you need to make sure if you're going to do that, you have a sharp knife. Okay, just make sure we spread this over evenly. And if you like butter, you can add butter on top as well with the cinnamon. But I try to cut back on too many calories in one meal sitting kind of thing. But, it's not so bad with keto to have full fat butter. Like I said, you're allotted a little more calories, but you really need to break down your macros, which I'll explain that in depth a little later with the recipe when I post it on my cagrayson.com. There we go. I think we got most of it on there. And I'm going to add this next fun product that I found. Now it's a little pricey, so this works just fine. You don't have to worry about adding this if you like. I just personally love it. It's a favorite of mine. And it's called Sucrin Gold, and it's basically fake brown sugar. Love it. down from here. There we go. Okay. So this guy, a little pricier. Okay, Berlin. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's her fun little fort upstairs. I'm jealous. I want a fort upstairs. This is what I'm talking about. It's called Super and Gold, and it's fake brown sugar. It's glorious for baking. And I don't have a set amount that I use. I just kind of sprinkle it on top just to add a little extra of that brown sugar flavor. So, I mean, I guess if I had to guess, it'd be about a tablespoon to maybe 2 tablespoons that I just kind of sprinkle on top for texture. And in the middle, and then I'm going to add a little bit of some more cinnamon. So we get that really powerful punch of cinnamon, which it's a cinnamon roll, so it should be there. Okay, so we've got our brown sugar and our sugar mixture, which don't put too much of that added brown sugar or you're going to be like kicked in the teeth with sweetness. Yeah, it's an attic. Although technically it's just kind of an upstairs loft area. So we're going to sprinkle on just a nice little fine dusted layer of cinnamon, just for an extra kick of cinnamon because I like it. You don't have to choose to do this stuff. If you just want a nice thin layer of cinnamon sugar. And then we're going to roll it up like a log. Now this is my method. The other method is you can actually cut them into 1 or 1.5 inch strips, roll them, and do it that way. I just prefer the log method. I'm sorry, I should say 1 inch strip. We're going to roll. Now, it might stick a little bit in areas, so it's actually wise that if you notice it's starting to stick, wet your hands a little bit and then roll it. So that way you don't tear your dough. But we're actually not having a problem with that right now. It's rolling beautifully. Beautifully. How you doing this morning, Berlin? Had a possum, huh? You know what? Possums are actually really cute up close. Or opossums. Same thing.
Yeah, I got a sword too.
Okay. Looks like we got ourselves a nice little roll here. Of course, it's just going to stick on the end. That's totally fine.
I'll hold on to that one for it.
Wow, I'm shocked. Actually, a nice little
Oh, I got some great shards too.
So get yourself a nice sharp knife. Go ahead and get rid of some of the junk because otherwise our space is just going to get all cluttery. And set this out of the way.
I used to do that. I'll hold on to them a little.
We're going to actually make our icing while our stuff is cooking. And grab myself my porcelain knife that I love. I got this for myself one year for my birthday. I absolutely love it. I've never owned a porcelain knife before, but this convinced me that I loved it. Okay, so we're gonna cut these into, now this depends on how thick you want your cinnamon rolls, or if it's just gonna be you eating it or whatnot. I typically don't like to do more than 2 inches when I cut, so I'm gonna cut a nice little section here and show it to you. And see, that's why I like doing the log style, because we can make a fun little rose out of that. And I'm just gonna set it.
moving, and just run up.
Yes. So there you go. Roughly about an inch to an inch and a half in diameter. And we're just going to set them kind of close together so they can bake.
I guess it's worth doing these just in case they drop the shadow charge on.
Put them in like this. And I have a nice little round mat that I use.
Black spike.
My knife is telling me I might need to sharpen it a little this week.
I would
It's
say
not cutting through as cleanly as I would like. There we go. Just make them in a nice little circle. And I'll show you that mat here in a minute. After we're done kind of ringing these around.
I don't think I've broken the stack on that one yet.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming by and have a great night. Hopefully you get to see the rest of what we create today. Always good to see you on.
And that's the one you're supposed to use for everything.
Again, apologies guys if I catch your comment a little late. We're just cutting our cinnamon rolls, making them a pretty little ring. For the oven. The oven is preheated at 350. And we're going to cut them into small sections. Like I mentioned earlier, just make sure your knife is sharp so that way you don't get messy little rolls. And you can cut them into strips as well.
The shadow chart increase yet or impact?
Probably be on Fortnite again this either tomorrow or Tuesday.
That's what I'm wondering if that's what
Here we go. And one more. This way they kind of bake together. It's soft. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in just a second.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start dropping the piece that I've got matched up.
Okay.
I didn't use running candles.
So these are going to bake for about 10 minutes. Let me get my mat so I can show you what I'm talking about. Now I love these, especially for keto baking, because you can make them into any shape you want. And I found these, you can find them on Amazon, but if you don't mind waiting a month for them to come in, you can go on a website like AliExpress and you can order them, and they're super cheap. It's just you have to wait somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to get your package because they come in from China. So I didn't mind the wait, so I ordered mine from there. You're just going to kind of fold this around like this. I might pull them in a little closer so that way I can see if I actually need a second ring or not. I might. Yeah. Sometimes sections are just too big. Yeah, what we'll probably do this week is we'll do a little Fortnite Tuesday, and I know my stream actually probably says Fortnite right now, which I forgot to switch it over last night. Secondary section. There we go. That's better. I'm just making it a little secondary section in here. Put two in the middle. Alrighty. Just try to keep them close together as best as you can. Now, if you're making for a bigger crowd, like a family of 4, you probably want to double this recipe. But this works just fine for my small family.
It will be a legendary dish, but
Just gonna kind of circle them around in there like this with our lovely little sheets. And this is just for, aesthetics, so you don't have to do it. They generally stay together well, but I find when you use something like this and they expand, they turn out very nice, like a little cake. I'm gonna bake these for 10 minutes at 350 degrees.
gently as they vanish an sword acts inside the
Got our timer set, and next we're gonna do the cream cheese icing, which I'm gonna show you guys. I got this guy, which is a cake baking pastry type thing. And you can get these pastry bags. You can find them online on Amazon. I think this whole set was like maybe 10, 12 bucks for all of these. You get 2 of these and a bunch of different attachments and whatnot. Now you can do it that way, or you can do it the way that I'm going to do it today because I'm lazy, and that's get a plastic bag, put the cream cheese icing in that, cut out the tip, and just squeeze it on. That works just as well for simple things like this. Now if you're wanting to get fancy, you probably want to get the nice pastry chef bag. For everything else, there's sandwich bags. Okay, so we're going to take a short break while I get my ingredients. So probably about 2-3 minutes here. I'm going to get all my ingredients and we'll come right back. Just one moment. Okay, we are back. Welcome back. Let me jump my screen over so I can see you guys comment. Here we go. Okay, so for this next one, you just need either a pastry bag or something simple, this sandwich bag here. And this next part, the icing, it's a super simple recipe to follow. You just need a tablespoon of everything. So you need a tablespoon of cream cheese, a tablespoon of heavy cream, and a tablespoon of sweetener. So really simple, easy to follow. And we're going to mix all those together right now. And if you'd like to make it a little sweeter, or if you like a slightly more lemony flavor in yours, you can put a few drops of lemon juice and some liquid sweetener, like this guy right here. Really important in keto desserts baking. Let's see here. I think I got rid of my spoons to mix those up. And we're going to scoop this into a little plastic baggie that I just got heavy cream all over. So just kind of mix them all together as best as you can. If you want something super blended, you can even put it in the food processor, so that way you don't have to do that. Just keep in mind that when you put it in the food processor, you're going to lose some of the product, so you might want to put a little bit more in there, like a tablespoon and a half, so that way you're getting everything. Just blend it all together as best as we can. We're going to scoop that into a bag. Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Uncanny Valley, by the way. It's super late to the game with everyone's comments, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. And if you like a lot of icing, you can just go ahead and double the recipe, so 2 tablespoons of everything, or so on and so forth. Just make sure you're doing equal parts sweetener to cream cheese to heavy cream. They all need to be the same ratio. Got that all out. Let me go ahead and bring our baggie off just a little bit so that's on the lid. So funny. I recently started watching something called, I think it's like Boss Girl or Girl Boss or something like that. I actually thought it was really good, but apparently it's not going to go on for a second season because the main character wasn't likable enough. And I thought, well, the real life, I think her name is Sophia, is not very likable, so I guess I could understand that. So we're going to have a little icing into one little corner like this to make our little pastry tip. Or you could just use a pastry bag if you've got it and you're super fancy like me. Yeah. Let's see how many minutes we have left. Oh, just got a few more seconds and they're going to come out. If you're familiar with my character on my apron, this was actually given to me by a friend of mine named Robbie. Robbie is super awesome. He got me this awesome Totoro apron, you can see, which Totoro is so cute. I can't believe Totoro actually came out, I think it was in 1985 or 84, a long time ago, but still super cute. A part of me like hopes Studio Ghibli will actually redo that along with a few of my other favorites as a kid. Like Howl's Moving Castle. Oh my gosh, I remember that. I know what book it's based off of, but I've never actually read it. I've always kind of wanted to because it sounds super strange. I loved Studio Ghibli stuff as a kid. Let's pull out our cinnamon roll. Little cinny minis. I'm gonna let these cool. So, what's also great about parchment paper is you can pull it right off the pan, from right out of the oven. It's awesome. That's why I love silicone baking too. I mean, technically you don't want to touch silicone right after it gets out of the oven because it still burns, and why you want to put it on something flat like this. But after setting it on the counter for a few seconds and pulling it from the pan, it cools super quickly.
Shield regenerates nice.
Yeah, see, it's a little warm right now to touch, but just grab myself a little napkin and pull it off. You can start to see here they're forming up, and once they cool down, they're going to harden, and then we can pipe that icing on top of it.
Yeah, once you actually.
And once you get used to how Fathead dough works, it'll be one of your go-to doughs. I am still trying to perfect my keto pizza, but what I'm noticing with keto pizza is I don't like how dense the crust is. So if you like a lighter, less dense crust, you're going to want to use lighter flours. But the coconut to almond flour ratio, I still haven't got down enough to comfortably post the recipe until I feel like it's thin yet flaky, like a crust should be for a pizza. So once I have that down, I'll get it to you guys. So we're going to let these sit and cool for a bit. I might go ahead and separate them a little. It's going to take a while for these guys to cool. And if you want to speed along the process, you can actually stick them in the refrigerator for a little bit and cool down, which I might do. Yeah, but these, you don't have to cool them. They're pretty much ready to go once they cool down, and you definitely want them to cool down before you put the icing on, because the icing will just be obliterated. It'll just like melt into nothing. Kind of like cupcakes. If you've ever made cupcakes, which I did figure out to make some pretty darn good red velvet and cream cheese cupcakes. So I will share that with you guys soon. And believe it or not, it involves almond meal with the cupcake recipe. So you'd think it would make it kind of dense, but it actually creates an interesting texture that's light and fluffy but satisfying too.
For like 4 hours after reset.
So looks like they're kind of starting to cool.
I guess we'll see.
And I'll go ahead and post this recipe up on my website, as well as I have my CA Grayson on Reddit that I also post my keto recipes on. If you like Cornish game hens
That one's good for me.
with stuffing, sausage stuffing, and cornbread, you would like that. I posted it yeah, not that long ago. I guess it's been a few weeks now. Cooking a bird can get difficult. It's all about that trussing. Making sure that you truss their wings and you brine, especially for smaller poultries. Brining is amazing. It makes them really soft. I'm trying to separate these guys out so they can go a little faster. And these are just little bitty dudes. These guys, you can make them as big as you want.
I can get, yeah, I can put words down, so my reset.
But I made little bitties for today. You make them as large as you want to. If you're just making them for you, you could cut them into those strips and make one big, large cinnamon roll, which would be fun. I should totally do that.
Yeah, it's from the exact shape of every one of those dishes. That's 24 hours.
There we go. Open that a little. So once you get your icing down like this, just go ahead and cut the tip, which I think my scissors are over here because I was doing a little crocheting last night. So. Go ahead and cut our tip here. There we go. Blended together well, and it's spilling a little bit. It's spilling.
Yeah, I was checking all the words.
It's not gonna let me tilt at all. It's like, oops. Okay, so there's no real secret to this. I'm gonna drizzle, 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 drizzle. And I'll get it over the top. It doesn't have to be pretty, like this is a total disaster right now. But it's gonna taste good, so it's okay.
So as long as you're spending so most for cracking slashes, you're good.
The trick, the last time, if you're on my Instagram when I posted, the trick to getting a nice kind of thicker icing is you want to put it in the refrigerator for a few minutes. Probably no more than 5 or 10 because cream cheese hardens really quickly. But today I'm impatient, so therefore we don't have really super pretty thick icing. But you just drizzle them on top.
Yeah. It's pointless because like you're wasting stuff.
Drizzle them on top.
Honestly,
I'm gonna eat one because why not?
I just like using the keyboard instructor on these because I don't have to tag everything. Just run the keyboard and tag everything.
Very cinnamony. Very good.
Right. I'll say
So,
you can have to kill everything.
there you have it.
And then you can just flash them.
Our keto cinnamon rolls. And I'll make sure to post the tricks, tips, and tools of the trade, and also the macros for those concerned about keto diet, and how you're going to break down your calories and your fats and your proteins for the day. I usually put all that up, and then also pro tips on how to wait, like I didn't do today, and let your icing and your cinnamon rolls cool a little bit before eating them. Make sure that you use all the ingredients that I've specified, because if you don't, your keto cinnamon rolls are going to turn out either really flabby and kind of dense, or they're going to be really runny. So just be careful with that. I'll be on Fortnite this week, probably Tuesday, I'm thinking. And then we'll come next Sunday. We're going to be doing Life is Strange part. I think we're on part 4 now. Either end of 3, beginning of 4, but I think we're on 4 now. So I can't wait to see what happens. We're getting closer to episode 5, which is the last one. So thanks for joining me in Totoro today. I hope that you enjoy your keto cinnamon rolls. Have a great Sunday.